The Nintendo Switch 2 is here, and people have hot takes. And it's up to us to react to them. I asked you, yes, you the audience, for your hottest, spiciest takes concerning the newest hardware from Nintendo. And you provided me an actual smorgasbord of options. We're going to react to them, we're going to talk about them. Let's get right on into this. Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and we are going to start off with a hot take courtesy of ZChili7775, who says, "The worst thing about the Switch 2 isn't the price or the license holder shenanigans, it's the fact that the Switch 2 has no games. It obviously has Mario Kart World, but as it stands, that's the only title to sell you on the system. It's the same situation as the PS5 launch. And you know what? We're going to do a package deal here, and we're going to do a 2-for-1 special." We have at Karito-000 who says the following: "The Switch 2's launch should have been later in the year. There is too little on the console besides upgrades for a very small group of games that already exist and one Mario Kart. If they pushed it back a bit, we could have actually had some good launch titles. Also, Monolith are gonna push this thing to the limit and Xenoblade 4 gonna be crazy." Now that last bit I absolutely agree with, but let's talk about this, because I think this is a trend when it comes to new hardware releases, especially concerning new console releases, that we're going to continue to see. Because we've had this for a while now, where the actual launch window doesn't have all that much. Like, in those opening months, there's very little to actually play, and a lot of the times it feels as if they're relying on older games and possible upgrades for those older games to justify an early admission into the new generation. And when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, I will push back on one thing and one thing only though. I agree the launch window isn't that strong. However, it does have more than just Mario Kart World. It does have Bravely Default Flying Fairy, which I have been personally enjoying just as much as Mario Kart. Now, that is a more niche game compared to Mario Kart, absolutely. You're not going to hear any pushback from me on that specific point. However, it is unfair to say the Switch 2 only has Mario Kart World. It's just that Mario Kart World is the only one with broad appeal. But I've been talking about this for a while now, that I thought the Switch 2's launch was actually kind of weak in terms of actual games. Nintendo largely, hedged their bets on the idea that Mario Kart World can single-handedly carry the first month of the Switch 2, and I think Nintendo was right on this assessment. We have seen just how many units the Switch 2 has actually sold in its early days, and there's also reports that a large majority of those consoles have Mario Kart World on them as well. I got the Mario Kart World edition because I wasn't going to spend $80 in a Mario Kart game, but 50 sounded more reasonable to me. And I haven't enjoyed a Mario Kart game this much since Double Dash on the GameCube. It is a Mario Kart game I find myself wanting to come back to and play just one more round, or one more Grand Prix, or one more knockout tour, all the dang time. It is a really good one. We can talk and debate about the actual price point, and I imagine we're going to do that later on in this video. However, when we're just looking at the game itself, I think Nintendo's bet largely paid off. Now, if you don't care about Mario Kart, yeah, the console's not going to have much to offer you outside of Bravely Default, which, let's face it, is a more niche JRPG. I think it's a really good game, don't get me wrong, and I've been enjoying it a ton. But it doesn't have the broad appeal many are looking for out of launch titles for a new piece of kit. Especially when we are going to get a new 3D Donkey Kong game in July with Donkey Kong Bonanza. So if the Switch 2 was just simply pushed back a month, there would have been at least Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza to tide people over. I think Nintendo did this purposely though, because I think their math indicated to them Mario Kart World was sufficient and can drive the console's initial sales by itself, and then you give people something to be interested in a month later with Donkey Kong Bonanza. I think gone are the days where consoles need to have a really solid launch lineup from top to bottom, because they can rely on, hey, Your older games, or at least quite a few of the ones people generally tend to care about, like your Breath of the Wilds and Tears of the Kingdoms, your Pokemons and your Kirby, stuff like that, they're going to run better on this console. Gonna cost you a bit if you're not online, but yeah, it's going to run and play better. Your existing library still carries over though, and in an age where digital gaming is becoming more and more prevalent, that is a powerful thing. Especially when a lot of people are under the impression saying, hey, I'm either going to eventually get this piece of kit when a game comes out that I care about, in which case for Nintendo you still have that sale, it's just at a later time, or people get in early knowing they're eventually going to get it anyways because they simply like Nintendo games. So you don't need to provide a swath of games for people to play on day one or within that initial year, because you can already make use of the comprehensive library of the previous generation. We saw this before with the PS5 launch, because that window wasn't strong either. But a lot of people had PS4s. And I think what Sony really wanted to hedge their bets on was saying, hey, your games will, at least for a good number of them, look and play better on this new piece of kit. You can play all your old games, and when a new game comes out, you'll be able to play it then and there. I think Nintendo, especially with the Switch 2 lineup, because we have seen like the install base of the PS5 in comparison to the PS4 be rather slow, but when it comes to Nintendo, when it comes to the Switch 2, I think Nintendo prioritizes longevity and always having something to look forward to instead of a shotgun approach at launch and have a bunch of games available then. They would rather say, hey, next month we're going to have this, and then the month after that or 2 months down the line we'll have this. Right? Like, it's like, consoles out now, you have Mario Kart World. Next month, you're gonna have Donkey Kong Bonanza. Wait a couple of months, Metroid Prime 4. And on top of that, all of your old games on the Switch work on this thing as well. Some of them are even better. You know that piece of hardware, the Switch, that you liked? Well, this is going to be a better version of what you already like. I think those are powerful things that can appeal to a lot of consumers. Now, if you weren't a fan of the Switch, of course, the offering of the Switch 2 is not going to really pull you in. But I think Nintendo's logic, and it's like hindsight will be 2020 on this, but I think what Nintendo is running with is the idea that they don't need to expand their reach into new markets, they just need to please the one they already have and go from there. Time will tell as more and more Nintendo games come online at $80, because yes, Mario Kart World, if you buy it by itself, is $80. You can also just get the bundle with the Switch 2, where it's valued at $50. That is far more reasonable for a lot of people, especially for an IP that massive. Donkey Kong Bonanza is not $80, it's $70. We will see how well $80 games perform down the line. But despite all the conversation that has arisen surrounding that, the stuff at launch, for a lot of people, isn't $80. It's either upgrades to games they already own, which yeah, in totality is $80, but a lot of people aren't going to view it that way, or have substitutes that you can get way cheaper, like Mario Kart World, with the package deal of the Switch 2. So I think in a lot of ways, the actual launch of the Switch 2, especially when it concerns like online discourse, it isn't the most colorful or exciting, right? It's just another Switch that's more powerful with Mario Kart, but for a lot of people, that is enough. And funnily enough, for me, it kinda is as well, and I didn't think it would be, because I am enjoying Mario Kart World way more than I thought I would, and I'm also falling in love with Bravely Default Flying Fairy. That game is great. On top of that, I do enjoy games like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and they do play better for me. And I'm hoping down the line we'll get upgrades to Xenoblade, cross our fingers. But let's talk a lot more about the price. We have at Angry Jetpack, who says, the console price itself is justifiable enough. It can run 120 FPS in 4K, not simultaneously from what I assume, but I digress. It's essentially Nintendo's version of a PS5 when docked, then in handheld, it's like a docked Switch, 60 FPS, 1080p. That's pretty impressive, so I'm okay with it being $450 USD. I talk about how the price of the games isn't okay, but this is about hot takes, not cold ones. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll address that at some point here as well. Look, I will be completely transparent and upfront about this. I was going into the Switch 2 thinking the price was going to be like either $350 or more likely like $400. I think for a lot of people, they do view $450 to be rather high, let alone $500 for Mario Kart World. But after looking at what the Switch 2 can do, how it performs, and playing it myself, I am kind of the opinion that $450 is not the most unreasonable ask for that piece of hardware. And I think Nintendo was and still is playing a dangerous game with possibly ostracizing that more budget, more casual gamer, which is an audience they really honed in on throughout the lifespan of the Switch. Again, time will tell if people just suck it up and pay the money anyways, or if they do actually just end up ostracizing a lot of people. I don't think, as of right now, we have seen the data to support the idea that has happened. The Switch 2 having the fastest selling console launch of all time, at least within the first 4 days to my understanding, kinda goes to show that at least for the first 4 days, it wasn't a significant deterrent for a lot of people. Or at least for the people that were going to be interested in the Switch 2 to begin with. There's always that asterisk when it comes to, like, conversations surrounding the Switch 2, that a lot of the actual negative discussion surrounding it could just be coming from a bunch of people that were never going to be interested in the Switch 2 to begin with. In which case, it's just a bunch of noise. But, like, yeah, the more you think about it, like, when you stop for, like, 2 seconds to actually think about it, in a couple of years, we may see Nintendo be right back in that position where they are viewed as the budget-friendly alternative to the other consoles. Because, in all likelihood, Xbox and PlayStation are going to have new hardware generations in the next couple of years. Heck, we already have new hardware from the Xbox announced at the last Xbox Game Showcase with the little Asus handheld thing they have. Those are likely to be expensive as well, let alone whatever the heck the PlayStation 6 ends up being or the new generation of Xbox consoles. We already saw the Xbox prices itself across the board, not only for consoles but also for accessories and games, go up almost like a month after Nintendo announced the Switch 2 and its price. Does anyone actually think that the next generation from Xbox and Sony are going to be anything south of $500? Because I don't. So give it a few years and a lot of this discussion to largely die down, Nintendo might be right back in that position where, comparatively speaking, if you want to get into gaming, they're one of the cheaper options. And for a more casual audience, if you're not content enough with the Switch, you might as well just go with the Switch too. It's going to be kind of funny if and when that actually happens. And look, we don't need to dwell on the price of $80 games, right? I've talked about that ad nauseum before and how I'm against it in totality. But my general rule of thumb is, if you're going to charge more and more for a game, people's expectations and standards for that game are going to go higher and higher. And if you are not able to meet those expectations, I think you won't see as many sales as you originally would. Or you'll just price out a bunch of people that would have been willing to buy the game to begin with, but can't, because they either can't afford it, or they would rather just dump that money on anything else. However, going off of this, let's move on to the next hot take, courtesy of @CRP4949, who says, I think that the sales drop-off after the record-breaking opening numbers will also be historic. I can't see many people buying this console in the state it is once the hype dies down, especially when games are almost $100. I think the price of the console isn't the thing that's going to be a big constraint. It's going to be the price of games as more and more games that are more expensive come online for Nintendo. And the question will be, do they simply price out a lot of people when they price their games accordingly like this? Now, it's not every game, right? Like, Donkey Kong Bonanza coming up next month is only $70. However, I imagine when I and many others say a game is only $70, that is met with a chorus of exasperated sighs as if $70 isn't expensive by itself. Whenever we get the price of GTA 6, that's going to cause some conversation, let's say, and be polite about it. But I think at the end of the day, people just simply like Nintendo games. And it's like, if you're not in the Nintendo ecosystem, or you just didn't grow up on Nintendo games, you may not understand it. Because most Nintendo IP, just like IP that I don't entirely care about, or I'm just not that invested in. There's a few, though, that I quite am. I like playing Fire Emblem every now and then, but two of my favorite IPs in all of gaming are Zelda and Xenoblade, Xenoblade being my favorite. And people just simply like Mario games, they like Zelda games. A lot of people like Kirby games, a lot of people love Smash Brothers, right? Like, let alone Pokemon. It's like Nintendo has a bunch of IP that would be system-selling IP by themselves for any other company, and Nintendo has a full deck of them. they're able to get away with a lot of business practices many people may have a negative view on, because at the end of it all, the most important thing in this industry is, do you bring the games? Because if you do, you can get away with pretty much anything. I play World of Warcraft, and there was a popular sentiment for the longest time that no matter how much Blizzard angered the player base, no matter what stupid decision they made, everything would be forgiven and forgotten the moment a new cinematic would drop, or a new patch, or a new expansion. Because the same thing applies to Nintendo. You can get upset about the Palworld stuff, you can get upset about the Game Key stuff, even though that's not Nintendo games doing it, it's third party. You can get upset about the price of the console itself, you can get upset about the fact that online is paid for nowadays, which is stupid, by the way. I'm not saying these things aren't bad points that don't deserve criticism. What I'm saying is, a lot of people are going to ignore them, look past them, or just forget about them the moment the next Smash Brothers comes out, the moment the next Pokemon comes out, the moment the next 3D Mario comes out, the moment the next mainline Zelda entry comes out. If the video games industry is a confessional, your penance would simply be to put out a new, good game. But again, I think time will tell about whether or not games that go for $80, or let alone, because I think we all expected at some point games to go to $100, we're just kind of waiting for GTA at this point. We'll see how successful they actually are. If people just suck it up and they save up the money because they care that much about that one IP, or they just don't care overall, or if that ever-rising cost just prices out a bunch of people. Because I think this simple train of thought will always reign supreme. If you want people to spend even more money on your game, it just has to be that much better compared to its peers. It just has to be that good. I don't like the fact that games are going up in price either, but what I think should be and what is actually reality can sometimes be different things. Now, a lot of these takes have actually been rather negative when it concerns Nintendo, so let's leave off with one more positive. We've at Music Boy VGM, who says Game Chat is one of the most useful features of the Switch 2. It's super easy to use and works better than expected. Now, I haven't utilized it myself, but I will say one thing. I was really not pleased with the idea that the Switch 2 Pro Controller or the Joy-Cons were going to be shipped with a button that, if you don't pay for the right service, just would be inoperable. And this is another case of what I've been yapping on about since the Switch 2's launch, with Nintendo just doing really bad PR to address a lot of the controversies around it. You can remap it. If Nintendo talked about this, they didn't talk about it enough. You go into settings, you go down to accessibility, and you can just remap the button to anything else you want. So I just remapped it to be another home button. That way I don't have to guess which is which. I just hit either one and it hits the home button for me. And it's like, you know what? I like that. And while I haven't actually experimented with Game Chat myself, because I'm a loner player. Insert cringe Kirito from SAO meme here. The functionality looks kinda good, and I talked about this before, with like Discord becoming worse and worse, and like everyone believes that that trend is going to continue down the line. I don't know, I'm kinda happy that Nintendo didn't just go the route of implementing Discord natively into it, and at least doing their own thing. And it's like, yeah, I don't really see many people ever using the camera functionality. Maybe they will, but being able to share your screen, even if it's a crappy feed, is kind of cool. It looks decent to me, and it's at least adding features to something that I thought was a Switch 1 weakness, that was the online. My overall takeaway for the Switch 2 so far, from using it nearly every day since I've gotten the thing, is that in a lot of ways, it addresses the issues I had with the Switch 1. It's at a good enough power level for the games that I care about on it. I prefer the build quality on it. It feels more comfortable in my hands. I like the fact that it's bigger. I like that quite a few of the games that I do care about, that being Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, actually now run at a halfway decent frame rate. Hopefully Xenoblade can see that love in the future. I'm enjoying Mario Kart way more than I thought I was going to, and I also really enjoy Bravely Default. And you know what, if people enjoying Game Chat, because that wasn't the only comment that I saw of people actually enjoying Game Chat, then you know what, that's kind of cool. And I'm gonna call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And leave a comment down below with your own hot take about the Switch 2. It could be about a specific game, it could be about the console overall. What do you like, what do you not like? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives, and I may choose it to react to it in a future video. So stay tuned for that. Stay safe, have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody, until we meet again!